Namaste, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of Stars, Stripes, and Sanatanis, a podcast by Hindu teens for Hindu teens.
Namaste everyone, it's Arushi Ramaka. I'm a junior from Montgomery High School, and I'm finally back to the podcast. It's nice to see all you again.
And I'm Bhuvanesh. Y'all have seen me for the past few episodes besides feminism, but let's go on. So we are here today to discuss the events that recently transpired at Rutgers University. Now, Arushi, I shall ask you to sort of introduce these events as you see them.
So, Rutgers University, for those who don't know, it's a pretty popular college in New Jersey, and it especially probably it's one of the college campuses that has one of the most Hindu Americans in America. So there's a group, an advocacy group, a Hindu advocacy group called Hindus on Campus, which has made moves in order to address the Hinduphobia espoused by a South Asian studies professor at Rutgers, Newark, named Audrey Truschke. So this episode will be kind of an overview on why that situation matters, what exactly is that Hinduphobia, and how college students can kind of establish discourse with their universities about these things while maintaining respect for everyone and also ensuring that their own community is heard instead of receiving unsolicited hate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important that we talk about this. So just to provide some more perspective, do we maybe want to go into a little bit of what Audrey Truschke has been doing that has been problematic for the Hindu community?
Definitely. I have this entire rant prepared, but for the purposes of respectful discussion, I'm just going to condense it. So Audrey Truschke has a history of in her books completely whitewashing a lot of instances of Hindu persecution throughout history. She's known for making a lot of statements such as claiming that Sita called Rama uncouth or that Rama is a misogynistic pig, that the Gita endorses genocide, and a lot of other comments that kind of follow this trend in academia where you have neo-colonial views espoused about Hindu dharma. And a lot of these are backed up by purposefully mistranslated Hindu texts. So you kind of just see blatant misinformation being put out there. And when students challenge it, they're kind of grouped together with, trolls, and they're kind of demeaned students for speaking out in an environment that should have freedom of speech for both teachers and students, especially if the students are from a minority religion with very less accurate representation in the media.
Yeah, and don't just take our word for it. We're going to actually bring in someone from Rutgers that's going to tell you a lot more about it by virtue of answering some questions we have prepared. Let's introduce her.
Of course, before we start, just a quick disclaimer that this is not meant to personally attack any people who disagree or Audrey Truschke in general. This is not a personal attack on her. This is more of students who are in New Jersey who kind of want to know how you can deal with academic Hinduphobia and why these type of problematic statements by professors should be brought out to be Hindu students should be able to openly put forth their concerns without feeling scared. Like, this is such a basic thing, and that is why this episode is being put out by Stars, Stripes, and Sanatis. So without further ado, I will shut up, and I will also introduce Krishna Desai, a freshman from Rutgers University, also in Rutgers Hindu Students Council, who has come to kind of give a perspective on, what's happening there and what she thinks about it. So, hi, Krishna. Thank you so much for being here, and we're really excited to talk with you about this.
Namaste, you guys. Thank you for having me. My name is Krishna, and I'm a freshman at Rutgers, and I'm a part of the Rutgers Hindu Students Council e-board. I serve as general meeting planner, and I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Thank you so much for coming back on. Listeners, don't be alarmed. It's me again, Shrieker. So I guess I'll start off with the first question. So why is it important to call out Hinduphobia?
Sure. So I think we've seen our ancestors or heard about our ancestors suffer enough through genocides and invasions, just so we can be alive, right? Just so we can proudly wear bindis or tilaks and simply call ourselves Hindu today, right? In my honest opinion, the least we can do right now is grow a spine and call out Hinduphobia, right? It's a matter of basic self-respect and, preserving our dignity.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. Like, I feel like we need to honor our ancestors in that way, like how they fought for, independence. And by honoring them, by calling out Hinduphobia and, doing our thing, freedom of speech, I feel like that's like, that's a good way of, honoring our ancestors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Krishna.
Oh, no. I was saying, I think it goes beyond independence too, right? There's Mughal invasions, and, our ancestors went through just such unimaginable things, right, for us to be here today. And it's really sad to think about. And it just gives me it's emotional to think about, and it gives us a reason to really, stand up and speak out.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that sometimes people are not really aware of the extent of what Hinduphobia is, like now and historically. Mm-hmm. So I really agree with Krishna. And that kind of moves us on to like next discussion point, right? So there's I think when I reach out to people about Hindu advocacy or just Hindu Students Council, one thing I get a lot is like, why should we care? Like even from Hindus, like aren't there like bigger problems out there? Like why is Hinduphobia really that important? So how would you respond to the assertion that apparently Hinduphobia is not as important as other forms of oppression, or that it's not like an imminent threat? So, what's your take on that? Because I find that statement to be highly problematic.
Mm-hmm. As frustrating as it is being hit with such assertions, right? It's important to understand that sometimes these people that make these assertions, they don't understand the severity of our situation, right? Nor do they know about our long and traumatic history, right? This is exactly why I think asking people to put themselves in our shoes is important, but I also think it's important to be blunt in the most polite way possible. Arushi, I've had similar experiences too when I talk about like Hindu advocacy. And, people were like, I mean, is it that big of a deal? And I said, how would you feel, right, if your ancestors were, beheaded and tortured for like over 700 years so that you can be alive and practice the religion you practice today, right? And I said, now imagine no one having any idea of this history and then being told that the problem your community faces is not as important as the oppression that other groups may face. And I remember the girl I was speaking to, like she went blank and she had no proper response.
Wow.
To what I said. Yeah, it was, yeah. I felt a little, I felt like I was attacking her, but I was really just standing up for myself, right? And for what, as I mentioned before, what our ancestors went through. And it's sad that we have to take this into consideration when talking to others about Hinduphobia, right? Because we're suddenly hit with these assertions that invalidate the issues we face. But it's critical we stand our ground, right? And retort with our history in mind. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. I feel like, we should come together as brothers and sisters, not just from the same religion, but from different religions and from different ethnicities. And, just like come together and just like unite that all these issues, should be taken seriously and, should be reversed as well. And I feel like another problem within our community is that like, how do we identify gaslighting, especially when it comes from people who claim to be inclusive?
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously Hinduphobia is like a rather sensitive issue for us. And gaslighting is something that quite literally makes us question our sanity, right? When people who claim to be inclusive listen to you, right, and they give you a response that makes you either feel A, as if the cause you're advocating for is insubstantial, or B, feel as if you're speaking to a wall, acknowledge and then digest the fact that you're being gaslit, right? It's a
Right.
really hard thing to take in and to acknowledge. But, I honestly think gaslighting is definitely hard to identify, right? Because it is a vehicle of manipulation. But I should note that it's important to understand that it's okay if you are a victim of being gaslit. And it's important that we speak out and we say, this is not cool, right? This is not okay. I'm doing my job as a Hindu and as as not even just a Hindu, as a human, to speak out against these injustices. And it's not fair that this is happening to me.
Of course. Yeah, I think it's important to, speak out whenever we see an issue going on, or if someone gaslights in this case. Would you say there's specific terms or a specific example that you have heard from other people or you have ever seen on the internet where people have gaslighted before?
Oh my God, several times. Especially I think the anniversary of the Kashmiri Pandit exodus, right? People are like, that didn't happen. That's not a real thing. And I'm not Kashmiri myself, right? But it hurts to see that, my Kashmiri brothers and sisters who have personal trauma, they're being told such, being told
Exactly.
that the trauma that their family has went through isn't real, and that's not cool.
It's
in the
that's like
slightest.
that's like I sometimes I can't wrap my head around it. It's like, how do
Right.
you call yourself an activist and then go around and tell people entire genocides don't exist? The lack of empathy sometimes I just it blows my mind, and I just have nothing to respond with.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really infuriating too. But it's not even just as an activist, right? As a human being, how do you tell someone, oh no, that genocide isn't real, that you didn't go through that, right? It's so bizarre to think about.
Of course.
Yeah, and there's quite a few people in my school actually, Krishna, when actually everywhere you see that there's a lot of these people who you never knew, their ancestors went through this trauma very recently, and they'll be talking online about what those days mean to them, those anniversaries of Exodus or genocide, and they'll just get attacked by people who they thought were friends, and you see no social media trends or anything. It's just kind of silence, like you said, talking to a wall. So
Yeah.
that paradox, that very annoying paradox that happens when Hindus speak up. Another very nitty-gritty question for you. Why do Hindu students always end up being called a fundamentalist or an extremist, etc., for doing literally the same exact advocacy everyone does for their community? Call out bias on both the left and the right, call out human rights injustices, media biases, etc. So how do students cope with that, right? Because it's extremely scary to be conflated with violent groups, or for being someone who's intolerant when you're simply doing such basic things. So that's something that was very daunting for me. So what would you say to that?
Right. I wish I had a perfect answer to that question, right? But similar to this whole idea of gaslighting, right? We are faced with being called such names as an effort to undermine or diminish the problems we face, right? Now, again, our religion is smeared all across the media and even in certain institutions, as we've seen. And as a result, people tie two completely unrelated situations together and assume that our efforts to advocate for the Hindu cause is actually pushing for a nationalist agenda in disguise, And it's
Right.
bizarre to think that asking people for basic respect or even just some open ears is being politicized and taken to such extents that we have to think twice before we speak, which makes coping with this situation a whole other issue in itself. Right? We remember that just like our ancestors who fought tooth and nail for us to be here, we can't give up. And, obviously we're not facing any invasions or, colonial rule, but it's imperative we sit down and initiate that conversation. Start with, hey, can you, if you're being called a nationalist, for example, right? Start with, hey, can you please tell me the definition of a nationalist? What's a nationalist, right? Now, if people are not able to give you a coherent and accurate response, I think that definitely speaks for itself. And if they do, it's very easy to politely carry forth a discussion that explains the facts of the matter, which is, persisting hate towards a religion that has constantly faced oppression has nothing to do with any political agenda. And I think it's important to discuss why the usage of such labels is dangerous and how it's ignorant to blindly follow these stereotypes without checking your facts first. Also, call out the double standards. Ask people, would you say this to someone of another faith that is speaking out against hatred towards their religion, or another, a member of another community? We also, I think it's important for us to, provide resources for people and inform them, right? We want them to walk away with articles or books that give insight into the issues that we are currently facing or also have faced. So, comments like that don't get made again in the future.
Okay, you said that you weren't sure if you would give a coherent answer, but that answer actually answered a lot of my questions. So that was
Agreed.
amazingly said. I just love how you gave a balance of how to be respectful towards others so you don't go down the rabbit hole of trolling, because trolling on social media in these topics is horrible, while also being assertive of who we are and what we've been through. So yeah, I'm definitely going to use that advice. And to everyone listening, listen to that. If you need to scroll through again and listen to that again, please do, because it's really important to have those conversations when it comes to things like Hinduphobia that aren't necessarily reported, or you can't really search it up and get a first and get accurate information on it. So that's very good advice.
Thank you.
I think kind of turning the conversation a little bit from conversations going to a more specific angle. So schools, right? Education. Of course, those are different words, but they are really, they're really powerful terms. And I think, education is one of the main things that allow us to gain knowledge, that allow us to understand about the world. So in schools where people, teachers, professors, when they take advantage of their job or when they actually not speak up about various issues that are going on that the students want to be spoken of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of leads me to my question. How can students at other schools establish this dialogue with their own school administration?
So this is kind of cliche, right? But it starts with one person, right? One person who noticed this is not okay, right? Find like-minded people, right? A trusted advisor in your school that's older, and facilitate conversation and take it from there, right? You're essentially working at a grassroots level, I want to say. So it's important to tailor your plan accordingly. You're also working with administration. You're also working with students too. So it's important to keep an open mind. And like I said before, make sure, you have your resources backed up to, provide to people when they ask questions. Be prepared for, being called a nationalist or, such comments like that. And it's important to have a lot of patience too. And I think that's the best way to go, is to find people and keep an open mind and, make change.
Of course. I think with the current situation of Professor Audrey Truschke, hopefully I'm saying her name correct. How did students at your school go about this? Because I know it was a huge issue and it still is a prevalent one. So either if there were her students or, students that saw what she was doing, how did they go about, speaking up to the administration? What was that like?
So it was interesting, right? Because we kind of started to notice something happening, right? We said, this is not okay. This is what's being taught. We would see on social media people not just from Rutgers, but even people outside of Rutgers seeing, what the comments that are being made and what's being taught. And we did a similar approach to, what I just said earlier. We said, this is not okay. And we got together, we talked, and we planned a lot. And we had a lot of discussions, and we saw what's going on. And we have allies, thankfully.
Yes.
We've seen quite a few student orgs the past few weeks, speak out and sign our petition and share a petition, and it's been great to see that. So it's been difficult to have these conversations and to show people, the threat that we're facing. But at the same time, we're also seeing, we're moving mountains, right? We're seeing progress being made.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this kind of goes into, I don't want to get into like law or different cases, but I feel like throughout history, especially, we see how students have gotten involved at schools. And I remember there was a specific case in the 50s about how, people were protesting, students particularly, and they were kicked out of school. I feel like we definitely have gone a long way since then when it comes to freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, like trying to persuade the administration what our thoughts are and how, how they can satisfy us, and how this sacred, like learning how we can actually make sure that we're learning the correct things and not spreading misinformation.
Right. Exactly. And I think, we also want to like work with administration. We want to work with students. We want to make this like a collaborative community effort. And we always have our, facts prepared, like you said. And we have, we have articles written about our history. We have,
Right.
there's books written, our history is not, it's legit. So it's important, like you said, to go in with facts and understanding.
Of course.
So Krishna, you mentioned that, like through all that collaborative work, one thing that you really made a point to do was like kind of reaffirm, the importance of, Hindu culture and Hindu history, especially because those are really important to like identity and community. So, you said that, you're moving mountains, you're making progress. So in that progress, what are some strides that you wish to make for the recognition of Hindu culture and advocacy on campuses? Like the sky's the limit here, right? So like, what are your dreams or what are your hopes that to happen in the next, I don't know, few years?
So I'm gonna talk about the next few weeks, hopefully, and then I'll discuss the next few years. But like I mentioned before, right? We've seen an outpour of support the past few weeks from several student orgs. We're being seen, we're being listened to by our peers, which is amazing, right? And hopefully we can continue this dialogue with administration and further spread awareness about Hinduphobia. And I can say that Rutgers HSC is planning a Hinduphobia conference with prominent speakers.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's in order to hopefully get more people involved and aware of the problems that our community faces on campus and even worldwide, because no one knows about the 7 Kashmiri Pandit genocides. No one knows about the 1971 Bangladeshi Hindu genocide, right?
Right.
So that's a huge thing, is to make sure our history is also being taught in schools. I mean, you guys are high school students, right? Have you guys been taught any of that?
Nope.
You should see the way they teach this stuff, like especially in terms of partition and violence that happens in South Asia regarding Hindus. It's like they like kind of forget that we can be oppressed. Like it's just
Right.
the thought that can happen is just not anywhere. Like I remember having to write down these outrageous things that just trivialize like all of these complex situations, and it would just like infuriate me. But I like had no idea what was right and what was wrong and how to challenge that. So it's like amazing to see that you guys are getting this support and having the resources to be like, hey, these are the stuff that we faced throughout history. Can you guys, teach it, make room for it? So,
Right. I remember like my history department, like our curriculum was Eurocentric. I don't even think India was mentioned once when I was in high school, let alone our, yeah. So it was just when I walked out of high school and then, I was hit with, these problems of, Professor Audrey Truschke and everything. I was like, you know what? People are actually, believing what's being taught because they're not even introduced to it in high schools, right? They're taught about, the French Revolution. They're taught about, the American Revolution, which is of course important, but there's a good chunk of our history that's being left out. And so people, believe otherwise when there's a whole world of history out there that's yet to be learned.
I think my experience was a little different. When I took normal world history in middle school, they taught about, like, of course, the caste system and just like these basic concepts.
Yeah.
But they also went into just specifically how, before and after the British came. So before the British came, there was all these traditions like sati and
Right.
things like that. But after the British came, they stopped all these practices because they were unethical and they just portrayed our culture in like kind of like a negative light. And fast forward to AP World History, and honors world history too. Like, I just saw how they didn't really talk much about our culture and anything. It was just mostly about what happened when the British came and how the culture kind of shifted. It was more kind of put in a negative light.
That's something that could resonate too, because they made us play a game. My teacher made us play a game where we had to pretend like we were members of each, like we were assigned a caste, and we had to act accordingly, which is like crazy. And we weren't even taught a single thing about the Mughals, and it's just really, really sad to think about, and sad to think about that kids are being taught this now too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of like all of that, like I've never really understood why they never actually go into what Hindu Dharma is. And
my God.
In terms of like the British and cultural shifts, right? They never mention how the British intentionally create a system of Hinduphobia, how they socially engineer the population, how they like mistranslated texts and created this like subaltern like sepoy mindset and just like pit like people against one another, Indians once against one another, like kind of denigrated Hindu Dharma. So I just find it really, it's just so hypocritical. And I think another thing was that there's a lot of influence from Hindu Dharma you see, right? Like we were learning about the counterculture in America, and you learn about transcendentalism in Thoreau and Emerson, and you hear all these wonderful ideas, but nowhere once they mention all the times that these people reference Hinduism or reference Hindu Dharma. So even the good things, that the parts where you see where instead of colonization happening, you see the West and the East interacting, there the word Hindu isn't even mentioned. Like I have to like bring it up in my classes, like, hey guys, this is where this came from, or hey guys, we were killed over here. Did you know that? So it's like
good for you though.
Yeah, so it's just like, I mean, it feels really nice to speak up, but it's also like disheartening that it's just like, like a very specific view of our culture is being constructed here, and it's just interesting to see.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people too who may be concerned about just like Hinduphobia in general, or like if they're on campus or in school. And I feel like there's a lot of people who feel uncomfortable about the way our history is being portrayed in history textbooks, or even how people are teaching it, right? So what advice would you give to high schoolers who are concerned about the way many colleges dismiss or even actively perpetrate Hinduphobia?
You know what? Back when I was in high school, right? Last year actually was my senior year of high school. We were in quarantine, and I committed to Rutgers, and I wasn't fully aware of this amazing HSC community that we have. I don't mean to plug, but I'm going to plug HSC in here. That I now have to lean, like I have this wonderful community to lean back on during times like this. So, I was really concerned that I'd be alone on this journey on campus as well. But I made the amazing decision to join Hindu Students Council. I talked to people. I found like-minded people who were equally as passionate about, seeking justice for Hindus here on campus. And I've not regretted it one bit, right? So simply put, right, you're not alone. You have a community of people here ready to take you in with open arms and be here for you. We are more than willing to help fight Hinduphobia with you. Our tagline of Rutgers HSC is Dharma Rakshati Rakshita. Dharma, when preserved and protected, protects you, which is something that incoming college students and Hindus in general who have this fear should always keep in mind. And
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like if it wasn't for Arushi, texting me about this event that we were having last year, I think it was exactly last year, I wouldn't have known that there was such this like large community of, Hindu students, Hindu American students, Hindu American youth. And yeah, I definitely agree. Like, no one is alone in this world. And, everyone has, people who are similar to them, who share similar experiences or are just a part of the same group. So yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful advice, Krishna. And by the way, Shrikar, I'm very happy that I got you involved in this wonderful organization. Like initiatives like this podcast or things that kind of give hope that, hey, we can have dialogue, we can put out our opinion, we can, do something proactive. Because just staring at all of this, staring at a wall of problems that hit you is just really depressing. And I think that, Krishna, your advice that, there's always a community there to support you even when you feel down or you feel confused is just something that just really grounds you. So dharma rakshati rakshitaha. That's what I have to say. So Krishna, thank you so much for coming on. I know that college students are busy. This is midterm time, so
yeah.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I really enjoyed this discussion. And I hope listeners, too, enjoyed it as well.
I'm sure they did. So we'll all talk again. And I wish Rutgers students the best of luck with your situation. And I'm sure you guys will get more allies and just really build up that pressure. And, maybe other universities will follow suit. And by the time I, apply for college, there's less Hinduphobia.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
I feel like there's always, a light at the end of this tunnel. So we'll be able to learn as well as not be, there won't be a gap in our education. So I'm really happy that this movement is actually happening.
If you guys do decide to come to Rutgers, please join HSC. We would love to have you too, of course.
That's not even a question. We're just coming. So I guess that just concludes our episode for today. Just a reminder for our viewers that, again, this conversation was about how to have constructive dialogue and advocate for the Hindu community, and it's not meant to personally attack or malign any teachers or professors, but rather to kind of call out, racism and bigotry when it happens, whoever says it, because in the end, truth always triumphs. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
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 Thank you, Krishna. We really enjoyed the wonderful insight that you gave us into what's been going on at Rutgers, and it sort of gave us a little bit more of a nuanced perspective on the whole situation at large. And with that, we shall actually finish today's episode. So just make sure to follow us on Instagram at HSC High School. Go to our Anchor page at anchor.fm/stars, stripes, and sanatanis. Subscribe to us on YouTube at that same name. And follow us in our other endeavors.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Watch out for our next few episodes and continue to be proud Hindus. See you soon.
Namaste, everyone.
Namaste, everyone.